Hello and welcome to another Old Man Watches video, and today I'm going to be watching, or have watched, Five Children and It, a 2004 kids movie based on a novel by Edith Nesbit. And basically the plot of the film, what's the film about? Well, in World War II England, five children stumble across it, the green thing on the cover, which is a sand fairy, a strange magical creature that is able to grant one wish per day. As anybody would, they make use of these wishes, which frequently doesn't work out as well as expected or intended or hoped, and learn some important lessons along the way. So that's what the movie is about. It's based, as I said, on a 1902 novel by Edith Nesbit, and I guess before I talk about the things about the movie that I thought were interesting to talk about, I do want to mention, it's a 120-year-old novel. It's got some seriously problematic content. So should you happen to hunt it down, there's a sequence involving Native Americans, which is very Victorian in its attitude, shall we say. It's really quite uncomfortable, probably to read these days. So, be aware of that. The movie avoids that stuff, that scene in particular, and is generally not anywhere near as problematic. But I do want to mention, should you ever, stumble across the book and think, it is quite different. It is set in 1902. It is quite Victorian in its attitudes, so be prepared. But what do I want to talk about in terms of this actual film? Well, first of all, I want to talk about the setting slippage. So, as I said, it's set in World War II. So 1940, 1941, something like that. But the book was written obviously in 1902, and therefore that's completely new to the film. There's no World War II. There's not even, the book was written before World War One, let alone World War II. So the setting has been changed. Why has the setting been changed? Well, a cynical person might say, well, The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe was in production, and it's set in, it has a sequence set at the beginning that is in World War II, and it's a fantasy movie with children encountering magical creatures, and we're making a fantasy movie with children. So is that the reason? I don't know. As I said, a nasty, suspicious mind might think so. Possibly, as another less conspiratorial explanation is simply that production costs are going to be lower because the things that people wore in the 1940s are much easier to kind of replicate and reproduce and than things that people wore in the late 19th century, potentially. It also may have just been to make it feel more contemporary. There's also subplots involving at least one child's kind of estranged relationship from his father who's gone away to war, so there are various reasons it might have happened. But I thought it was interesting to talk. So when you change the setting of a work, you're definitely going to change the overall feel of the work in some way, which may upset those who are fans of the original, or it may be a feature. So I mean, we've seen a bunch of recently of Sherlock Holmes, but in the modern day kind of TV shows, for instance. And sometimes the setting shift can actually be a part of your selling point. I don't think that this movie quite gets there, but clearly there were reasons they wanted to move it. The war was probably a factor. I mean, but obviously they could have shifted it to World War One, which would have still kept it feeling a lot more closer to its original kind of setting. But they moved to the 1940s for reasons that only they know. But it's interesting to talk about, why did they do this? What implications does it have for the plot? It allows you to introduce, for instance, a spy element if you want to, which has been done, for instance, in Swallows and Amazons, the most recent Swallows and Amazons film adaptation, which was a book that was a much bigger part of my childhood than this one. But in the most recent adaptation of that, for instance, again, they moved it to World War II setting, or I think they maybe even actually kept it in the late 30s kind of setting, but they introduced a Nazi spies kind of element to Swallows and Amazons. So you can do stuff like that. I don't know that it's always necessarily necessary, but sometimes it can be interesting. So be careful what you wish for is a theme of the movie, I guess. It's a pretty common theme in media. I mean, a classic example, obviously, is The Monkey's Paw, where the the couple get the monkey's paw, which grants wishes, and they ask for things that they think they want, and everything gets worse and worse and worse until basically they make a wish on the monkey's paw that that they hadn't made any of their wishes. Now, the Sand Fairy, in this movie, is not malevolent like the paw is. Like, the monkey's paw is actively trying to harm you for your wishes, basically. The Sand Fairy isn't like that, but the wishes that the children make rarely work out as intended or desired. And that's a thing that's in the book too. They make a wish because they think it'll be good, and then they discover the downside of whatever it is that they've wished for. It's a fairly common theme in media. I'm a bit leery of it as a theme. It's very close to, it's very close to a message of be happy with what you have, which is Neighbours with shut up and accept your lot. So I feel like, be careful what you wish for. You have to be careful, ironically, that be careful what you wish for doesn't become don't dream and don't hope for better. Because we should all dream and we should all hope for better. And we should do it eyes open, thinking about the consequences, but we should absolutely dream. So, yeah, it's a theme. It's I thought it's worth talking about because it is a potentially problematic theme, I feel. I don't think the movie really strays into that necessarily. Probably less so than the book, certainly. But yeah, it's definitely there. And finally, casting matters. So I think this movie has a couple of casting issues. Freddie Highmore, who is sort of the main child out of the 5 children. I mean, there are 5 kids, but he's the one with the issues with his dad and the estrangement that he's feeling, and he's very much kind of the named child actor in the movie. He's simply not as charismatic as the movie supposes him to be. And I don't know that he really holds it together as well as it needed to be held together. Similarly, while I'm a big fan of Eddie Izzard, I like his work in terms of stand-up and the like, I'm not convinced that he was the right pick to be the voice actor for it. His performance, it's hit and miss, I feel, which is unfortunate given that obviously, the Sand Fairy is an important part of the story. So the casting is a little bit wobbly, I feel. At least Kenneth Branagh, who plays crazy Uncle Albert, seems to be having a fine old time chewing the scenery. He's good fun when he's on screen. But yeah, casting is perhaps not as good as it could have been in this movie. So that's basically what I had to talk about with 5 children in it, and why, what it did, why it did it work. I like it as overall. I haven't said that. Overall, the movie's not bad. It's an okay way to spend a couple hours if you've got kids. I don't think I'd be saying chase it down unless you had children, however. So we're going to change things up quite a bit with the next review in terms of tone, and we're going to look at Preaching to the Perverted, I guess sort of sexy, quote unquote, romantic comedy from the 90s. We'll be looking at what works in that film, what doesn't work in that film, and why it does or does not work. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed this one. Thanks for watching, and hope to see you in the next one.